Hi, and welcome to another edition of Todd Talk, where we take teaching theory and turn it into teaching practice. So, the topic for today's Todd Talk is going to be the last week of school. What I notice a lot in many of the buildings that I walk around in my district and work in is that the last week of school is kind of a throwaway week. It's kind of a waste week, in that students are expected to be learning and teachers aren't expected to be teaching. What I see a lot of is kids, doing playing games, but they aren't really learning anything, or having extra recess, or they're doing activities that don't really teach them anything, just to keep them busy and to get them to the end of the school year. So, what I'm suggesting is that we are in school typically for 180 days of the year, and students should be learning 180 days of the year. So if you waste that week, that's a week that a student could have had learning something. So, are there better things that you can be doing? And of course, there are. And I have 5 suggestions for things that you might try the last week of school. The first of which is called the Passion Project. And a passion project, the essential question of a passion project is basically, what is something you've always wanted to learn? And then how they manifest what they have learned can come in several ways. They could teach the class, do a mini lesson for the class. They could, make a wee video presentation for what they learned in order to teach others and post it on YouTube. You could have like a passion project fair where on the last day of school, kids are, at tables, and they're explaining that as people who are walking around from other classes who aren't doing anything. At least they can come and learn something, but they would explain to them what it is that they learned. And keep in mind that these passions don't need to be academic in nature. So if a kid has always wanted to learn how to ride a skateboard, or if a kid has always wanted to learn how to crochet something, that could be what they do for their passion project. And that's kind of the idea here, is it's teaching this love of learning. It doesn't have to be academic in nature, but learning is something that people do all the time, and it doesn't have to be dictated by school or be academic in nature. So the second thing that you might do with students is get outdoors. Now, what I don't mean by get outdoors is like give them extra recess or go out and play kickball or things of that nature. What I mean is it is summertime. That's why it's summer break. And, it's a perfect time to kind of knock down the walls of your classroom and get outside. So, for instance, some things you could be doing. So let's say you want to do silent reading with the kids. Well, don't sit there in chairs in the classroom and in the air conditioning and read the book. Take them outside. Have them spread out over a grassy area, or go underneath a tree and do their reading that way. And so this just gets kids outside in a world where they increasingly are staying inside more and watching videos or playing on their phones or their iPads. Other things that you could do is you could have like presentations outside. So like a poetry reading could be done outside, something of that nature. Yet another thing you can do with them outside is you could have discussions. So no matter what your subject area, if you want to have a discussion about that, or how the context of how that fits into the real world or things of that nature, take them outside, sit in a circle, sit crisscross applesauce, and go around and have a discussion. But just get kids outside, and rather than being cooped up in the classroom wanting to be outside, put them outside and then have them learn outside. A third thing that you might try is teaching a 21st century skill. So this is not something that is a content standard, but it's something that is going to be very valuable. And some examples of this would be like public speaking. So having an assignment where kids have to give a public speech the last week of school, or the students in the classroom will spend the week doing presentations, because learning the skill is something that's going to be very valuable. Another 21st century skill you could teach them is collaboration. Hopefully you've been teaching that all year long, but have them do a group project or something like a STEM design challenge that requires them to work as a group, and to reflect upon how working groups worked and what they could be doing to do better. Another 21st century skill that you could be teaching them would be creativity. So have them do something really creative. Again, it doesn't have to be academic in nature. They're still learning. Just because it's not academic doesn't mean they're not learning. So could you have them do something that's really creative and is teaching them to use their imagination? So it could be writing a short story. It could be doing some artwork. It could be, taping or making a video of something. There's all sorts of things that you could do that allow kids to be creative, and at the same time, as a result, they're learning how to use their imagination. So those are just some examples of 21st century skills that you could teach the last week of school that you maybe didn't have time during the school year because you were so focused on content standards, which happens. So a fourth suggestion would be that you conduct exit interviews with your students. So you could maybe do these individually while kids are doing silent reading or something like that. You could have each kid come up and do an exit interview with them. You could do it as a class, have the entire class do an exit interview. But the idea behind this is twofold. The first thing is that students are really reflecting upon what they got out of the year and what they learned for the year. And this reflection is really important. The second thing it does is it helps you. So you realize, what did kids really enjoy? What did they not enjoy? What did they get out of it? But by doing this exit interview, and it's the last day of school, so kids are going to be more honest with you than they're going to be any other day of the year, because there's really no repercussions or any, nothing that you can do once they say what they say. And so it's a really good opportunity to get some feedback on your class and to help students understand that learning is not just about gathering information. It's reflecting upon that information and figuring out, how that was valuable to them and why that was valuable to them. So a fifth and final suggestion, and this is going to sound crazy and way outside the box, is simply keep teaching. So I was the type of teacher who I taught up right to the last day of school. I planned my lessons, and we would be doing a geography unit the last week of school. While they were going to other classes and watching movies or playing games, they were coming to my class and having class like they normally would. I actually would give a test on the last day of school. And I know that sounds harsh and mean or whatever, but it's not. It's just the learning process. And so I wanted to make sure that I was, getting every single class time I could have with students and making sure that they were learning my subject area. So, and of course, you can run into obstacles because the office may say, well, grades are due 3 days before school's out, but I was taking grades to the last day of school. And so, the schools can, the way they set things up can make things challenging, but, you can set your class up any way you want, and you can still assess them that last week and just tell them you're not going to get their grades in before that deadline. So that's something to consider, is that you just run your normal units or normal lessons or normal whatever, and you take it up to the last day of school. But, I know that can be difficult, especially when other classes are doing all sorts of things. But, it is something that can be done. And like I said, I didn't have any problems with students or any behavior issues or whatever that last week of school when we were doing academic work. So there you have it, 5 things that you might try for that last week of school. So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that you have them. You have a captive audience. You have students who, are look up to you and want to learn from you. And so take that opportunity to be learning right up to the last day of school.